All right. Hi, everybody. Apologies in advance. My hair just did something weird, and now I'm going to pick at it for a bit until I can figure out how to make it look less weird. But also, I have people working on the fence outside. And so we may hear the occasional chainsaw. And I apologize for that, just in case anybody can hear it. If not, fantastic. I've done everything I can to sort of take the sound away and make the dogs chill. The dogs are pretty chill. Good for them. Happy about that. Okay. So, good morning, everybody. How was your weekend? um, Hello to AJ, our mod. Kristen, I saw you jump on early. Hi, it's great to have you here. Jenny, good to see you. And Aaron, hi. Um, this necklace, Jenny, thank you. This is Sekhmet with the wings of Ra. She came to me in a vision, truly. We were in Egypt and I went in to see the statue of Sekhmet, had a vision of her with those wings, exactly those wings, because there's several ways wings can be portrayed in Egyptian symbolism. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then we went to an unplanned jewelry store. And I went in just to support the travelers. I wasn't planning on buying anything. I was going to be there for 2 weeks anyway. So I needed to manage my purchases. But then as I was walking around, sure enough, the first thing my eyes set on is Sekhmet with the exact wings looking exactly like she showed me in the vision. And I confirmed it with our guide. And I have no idea how much this necklace cost because I understood that it was for me. So it's mine now. And that's the story of this necklace. And I have it with my cartouche that has my name on it as well. So that's fun. Um, Coffee. I had some coffee this morning already, which is great. I've got water next to me now. I hope everybody's doing all right. It's been a heck of a weekend. So that full moon didn't play at all. I looked like a dragon for a minute. Yeah, I could see that. Cool. So we have the full moon that occurred over the weekend. If you guys have any questions about that, I have prepared some thoughts. But we're also experiencing some pretty interesting transits this week that we can talk about, and we can talk about all of it. I'm going to let you guys kind of guide what you want to hear, what you're in the mood to hear, how you want your mood to be boosted today. This week, we are experiencing the Venus and Mars Cazimis. So both of them will be occurring in the same week. And because Mars is slow, that one's going to ride with us for a couple of days. And it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. So good morning, Carl. It's good to see you. Yeah. Let me check in here. Awesome. Yes. Venus and Mars paninis. I wish I could go for a good panini. No. So Kazemi, if you're interested, I did a lot of extra research today. So there is an astrologer, as you can tell, in the Hellenistic period. His name is Rhetorius, the Egyptian. 10 points if you can guess where he's from. And he did this book on astrology. It's called the Astrological Compendium. And he is one of the earlier sources we have that talks about what a Cazimi is. And a Cazimi is interesting because astronomically, the Cazimi is when a planet is exactly conjunct the sun to within a full degree Hellenistically. And then as we got into more medieval era and they were tracking a little bit more mathematically and specifically, they gave it about 17 degree minutes on either side of the sun. So they lessened it and made it even more honed in. Hi, Erroneous. So what we're finding there is, back in Babylon, or we have records of astrology that show that they've been studying the signs since at least 5000 BC, probably earlier, but that's when the writing showed up. And at that time, what they were really focused on was, can I see the star or not? And if I can see it, what is it doing? And when it's in that position, what happens on Earth? So there was a lot of sort of empirical observation. And we do think there was some channeled sort of understanding that was then tested empirically as well, right? Like the archetypes of the deities that were associated with these planets are really interesting. And the way that they repeat in other cultures is another interesting factor. So there is probably some intuitive enhancement to astrology, or an intuitive background to the interpretation of astrology, as well as the observation. And so they mostly looked at, in very ancient astrology, we're talking Mesopotamian, they looked at, is the planet ahead of the sun or behind the sun? Is the planet visible, or has it gotten so close to the sun that the glare of the sun makes it impossible to see? And so those things were very important. And then, of course, is the planet retrograde? Is it moving backwards? Those were the big things that they were looking at that time. It was much more observational. They created records and began anticipating the movement of the planets. Eventually, we began anticipating when eclipses would happen, if they would be partial or full, those kinds of things, visible from the location. That kind of stuff happened in Babylon later as well. And then you get into the Hellenistic or the Greco-Roman period, and they started getting a little bit more mathematical about it, breaking signs up into decans and bounds and those kinds of things, doing different zodiac breakups. And that is the era in which we find Rhetorius the Egyptian, of course, in Egypt. And so Rhetorius talks about how he has access to some sources that talk about a mitigation to the star being invisible. When a star is close enough to the sun, if you were to try to look at it, you would be blinded by sunlight. So you can't see it. That, and it's daylight at that time. If the sun is up, we have a blue sky. Therefore, you can't see the star. So this star becomes invisible and is considered to be burned up by the sun's rays. So it's like it's falling into the, what's it called? The forge. It's falling into a forge of the sun, right? It's getting burned up and remade in there. And so as it's going through that process, we then find when it's exactly conjunct the sun. Some astrologers in ancient times said this was a mitigating factor. In fact, it was very poignant. Rather than being burned up and charred and destroyed, essentially, it is now honed. Think about when you hold a magnifying glass up to the sunlight and you get that beam of light just at the right angle. That's the kind of thing that they were thinking about when they thought about a Cazimi. When the planet is exactly conjunct the sun, it gets that sort of magnifying glass ray. And they called it in the heart of the sun or in the throne. So it gets another example of being sort of lifted up by the sun. The sun purifies it in all that it is. And some astrologers would say that in this condition, you might find the planet being the most expressive of its archetypes and traits in its pure essence. And especially if the planet is in domicile or if the planet is in exaltation. Venus is not in domicile or exaltation. She has some triplicity in Capricorn, which is the sign that all of this is occurring in. She has some triplicity there because it's an earth sign, and she is a triplicity lord of the earth signs by day, I believe. But Mars in Capricorn is exalted. So we've seen what Mars in Capricorn has been up to in some of the current events recently. And now with Mars being Cazimi with the sun, considered in chariot as well with the sun, because the sun and Mars are in Capricorn at the same time. So Mars has the sun welcomed into his space. We see a very potential for a very strong Mars archetype to be expressed. And so that's the kind of stuff, especially in context, that we're looking at this week. And for additional context, I can show you the chart and we can find out together, like how many days, which days this week are we looking at as being the most potent for those Cazimi energies of both Venus and Mars, because Venus is there too. So I'm going to catch up on the comments really quick. Good morning, Shauna. Hopefully we are helping you wake up with that one. Let's see here. Good morning, Misty. It's good to see you. Hi. Awesome. So yeah, that's the overview of the most interesting stuff this week. Of course, all of this is happening also opposite of Jupiter. So while Venus and Mars will conjunct the sun and each other, they will also oppose Venus, the sun, and Mars will oppose Jupiter at some point in the week as well. And I can show you that too. So yes, that is what we're thinking about. Happy to be in the same personal space. Agreed. I'm really glad you guys are here. This is, again, one of the anchors of my week, and I appreciate you all so much. The animation you shared of the planets moving around the sun, moving through the universe is cool. Yeah, so that's the astronomy of how it works. And then if you think about all of that movement, but from our position, that's where we actually watch the planets move and go retrograde and, be ahead of the sun and behind the sun and all those things. And they interpreted that to have meaning and to give planets either strength or weakness in those states. Yeah, cool. So, um, do we want to see a chart of the Cazimis? And I can show you guys kind of how that's going to unfold day by day. If you want to see the charts, let me know. I'm happy to bring that up. Good morning, Ren. It's good to see you. I'm going to catch a drink here really quick. Kathy says yes. Kathy, you are always first to be enthusiastic about the charts. I appreciate you. I need you to know. Chart. Okay. So I'm going to do a chart for the moment. I have a couple of charts prepared for today, just to make sure that we can cover everything and do it in ways that feel good. So I'm gonna start us with today. Why not? So I'm going to update this to now. And if I show, I'm going to show I would like to show the not a tab. I want to show a window. We'll do this one. Cool. That way, if I need to change tabs, you'll be able to see it. Apologies, you get to see my tabs, but hey. So what we're looking at here is the chart for basically right now. And as you can see, Venus is already expressing her Cazimi in the Hellenistic sense. I believe also in the medieval sense. Remember, Hellenistically, it's within a degree of the sun. And so right now we see that Venus and the sun are both on the 15 degree of Capricorn. So they're both halfway through Capricorn. This is also called a partile conjunction. Whenever a planet is on the same degree as another planet, it is partilely conjunct that planet. In this case, because the sun is involved, we see that being a Cazimi. So the Venus Cazimi is active as we speak. And as you can see, we have a little bit less than a full degree before Mars and the sun are exactly conjunct. So in that whole 60-degree minute concept, or the Hellenistic idea of Cazimi, we are now also in the Cazimi for Mars too. Both are active. So we're in that space. And if you're wondering, on the 3rd, I don't think it was yet quite in that space, because the sun would have been back by a couple degrees. So that's where we're at right now. Now, what we're looking for is the way the planets work. They move at different speeds. And this is a really excellent example of planetary speed at work. And I'm going to explain that to you as well as we move this chart around. I'm just going to catch up on some of the stuff I see here. All right. Good morning, Lady Avalon. Great to see you. Yay, you ordered your honeycomb planner. I'm so excited too. That's so much fun. All right. So as we can see here, this is the application of two Cazimis. You might think the sun is ahead of Venus, therefore that's already separating, like the sun is moving away from Venus. However, Venus moves faster than the sun through our sky. And so what we actually find is that by order of speed, it goes like this: from fastest to slowest through our sky, the moon is the fastest. Mercury is the second fastest. Venus is the third fastest. These are the planets that are interior to our orbit with the sun, right? It's the sun, Mercury, and Venus. So those two are faster by our perspective because they're inside our orbit with the sun. Then we get the sun. And then once you get beyond the sun, these planets become the slower ones. So Mars, because it's beyond our orbit, that one moves slower from our perspective. And then Jupiter and Saturn, of course, being the slowest of the visible planets. And so in this little triad here, Venus moves faster than the sun. She's going to catch up to the sun. Mars moves slower than the sun. The sun is going to catch up to Mars. So as we watch this go day by day, you're going to watch that same kind of thing happen. So let's check that out in real time. So we're on today. Both Cazimis are in effect. By this time tomorrow, we can see that Venus has nearly caught up to the sun already. Now they're on the 16th degree. Mars has moved over to 17. The Cazimis are still in effect, and Venus is almost perfect. So tomorrow, Venus will perfect her Cazimi with the sun because she will catch up. Now we see the next day, she has surpassed the sun. So you see how she's moving faster, and she is going to conjoin with Mars. So Venus is pulling ahead of the sun, catching up to Mars. And then the following day, she pulls ahead of Mars, and Mars will have the Cazimi with the sun when the sun catches up to Mars. All of this, of course, happening very closely opposite Jupiter. So as the week progresses, we have the sun and Mars staying in that Cazimi for quite some time, right? They've only separated here by like 3 degree minutes. Venus is pretty, she's out of Cazimi by this point, but these two are still in it. So from now to the 9th, and the 9th, if we look here, that's Thursday. We still have that, because I never know how to make that calendar go away. Okay, we still have the Mars Cazimi in effect, and it perfects, I believe it perfects on the 8th. All right, and then we have another day forward, and now they're still on the same degree, but the sun is pulling ahead, as you can see. So still having that, and now we have them both in opposition partilely. Remember exactly to the degree of Jupiter. So that opposition, Mars opposite Jupiter, Cazimi the sun, that's something to keep an eye on, right? And that's happening around the 10th, 9th or 10th, looking at this. And then let's see, the sun finally gets to another degree, but Hellenistically still within Cazimi on the 11th. And we really want the sun to pull ahead like further than a degree. So by the 12th, the sun finally gets out of that Cazimi range. Mars is now burned up and will eventually, as the sun pulls ahead further, will rise to our vision behind the sun. So you'll be able to see Mars in the mornings before the sun rises. Venus is going to pull ahead of the sun, and we will actually see her in the evenings just after sunset when she becomes visible. So that is the Cazimi between now and the 12th. So we've got a solid 5 or 6 days of experiencing, especially the Mars Cazimi, because Mars is slower and the sun is just slightly faster than Mars in our perspective. Venus, of course, pulling ahead a little bit here as she does. So that's how we're going to see this Cazimi. And of course, we are paying attention. Jupiter's retrograde, so you can see he's moved back to the 19th degree. And so that opposition is also something that is a factor in this whole scenario. And we could also look at the moon and the moon's interaction with all of this. She will be able to see Capricorn from Virgo, from Libra, and from Scorpio. So pretty much the entire time of these Cazimis, the moon can see it too. And that makes things transmissible to us as well. So it's a personal kind of week. It's a week where stuff perhaps happens. Does the planets aligning like that affect anything? It looks cool and interesting. It absolutely affects things. Yeah. So again, as we mentioned, I don't know if you were here at the very beginning. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, Jenny. When a planet is Cazimi with the sun, it is amplified. It is in the throne. It is given sort of a position of power, so to speak. And so being in the heart of the sun and being potent like that, let's refer to what Rhetorius says. So you don't have to take my word for it. Let's see. We have said these things about the morning and evening stars, rising, setting, retrogrades. The stars are inactive and weaker and uneven in their action, except the stars that are in the heart. So if you can't see a planet, it's considered to be weaker and sort of broken, right? But when it's in the heart, which is Cazimi, the stars that are in the heart are said to be those that are conjoined partilely to the sun, either in the same degree or an adjacent degree within 60 degree minutes. None of the ancients have made mention of this phase, but we have found it by experiment. We have added it to the list because even Ptolemy spoke of conjunction as a phase, but didn't mention its force. And so in this, they say that it's given a relief from that brokenness. And actually, I like to think about it as refined. This is a process for the planets where it's kind of like when you have a sword that needs to be reforged. The planet needs to be reforged. It has finished a whole cycle around whatever its phase is going to be. For Venus, it gets like a sign and a half on either side of the sun. Mars will go all the way around, or the sun will go all the way around and catch up to Mars. So in their cycle with the sun, they need to be remade. They need to be reborn. The circle needs to begin again. And so at the end of that, you can find that when they fall into the rays of the sun, they are being purged of all the stuff that doesn't need to be there. And finally, when they're in the center of the sun, they are purified, almost molten, you could imagine, and ready to be reformed. So it's that space of the pure essence of something. And then once they have that, they get to be reborn. This is the part where the blacksmith would be hammering the sword into whatever shape is better and stronger. So this is the moment where we see purified, unmitigated, perhaps, Mars, purified, unmitigated Venus. The reason I emphasize Mars so much is because he, by sign, is very strong right now. And we've seen over the weekend when the moon was opposite Mars, some of the archetypes of Mars at play. So I'm just kind of bringing that up so that we can feel braced, prepared, grounded in whatever may come this week so that it helps in whatever way is possible. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's okay. The whole point, you said you're not well versed in astrology. Yeah, I'm happy to do this because my goal is you don't need to be well versed in astrology to be able to work alongside it. I'm happy to translate it as much as I can. That is what I consider to be my job as an astrologer, especially one who works with clients, refining, sharpening, and honing skills. Yeah. Yep, exactly. So thinking about Mars, though, in a larger context, Mars is being remade, being knighted, even you could think. So going through an initiation of some sort that is raising Mars up to another degree. So keeping an eye on that. But Venus is also experiencing that. So we're going to see how that plays out with both of these happening at the same time. It's a very interesting thing to be able to observe. And of course, like I said, it's already in effect and we will be able to watch it unfold throughout the week. So that is your sort of overview of how the Cazimis are going. Does anybody else have any questions about that? Can I make anything clearer? Anything like that. So when will we be looking at where Mars and Venus sit in our personal charts houses? For these Cazimis, if you wanted to see how this might be affecting your chart, then you would look at Capricorn in your chart. Wherever Capricorn is, whatever house Capricorn is in, that's the area that is experiencing the transit of Mercury, Mars, the Sun, and Venus right now, and the opposition of Jupiter, of course. And so those Cazimis are occurring there. It's a lot of energy. This is very much a stellium. All of the personal planets, except for the moon, are in this sign. So we have a stellium in Capricorn right now, which means that everything that Mars oversees, everything that Venus oversees, everything that Mercury oversees, and everything the Sun oversees, all answers back to that Capricorn collection of planets right now. So this gathering is like a council of dignitaries from their own places, and they have come together to have this council of planets, and we are seeing what they are deciding, so to speak. Yeah. Is the house that this is happening in, the 11th house on the chart, significant? This is an arbitrary location. So the only reason I would, if I were to do this in a world astrology mundane context to say, what does this mean for the world? I would go to my location to see what it means for my local area. Or in this case, I would put, if I were doing for my nation, I would do wherever the center of power is for that nation. For us, that's Washington, D.C. It's roughly the same because I live close to D.C. So it would be in the 11th house there. What does that mean for the U.S.? The 11th house is good diamond, fortune. It represents friends. So this is, again, not exact stuff, because when the Cazimis go exact, it'll be at a different time and it would be in a different space. So I would have to really refine it to take it back to, let's see, let's get back to the Mars Cazimi. It's the closest one to access here. Now we're going to have to move back another day or so. Let's see. Okay, so here we're really close. Now we'll take it by hours and see, because as you can see, now we've got it moving houses because of times, right? So the sun gets higher in the sky. We need, actually the sun's moving faster than Mars, so we got to go backwards. There we go. Backing it up just a little bit. And we're getting there. We're getting there so close within 2 minutes. Okay, this is the one because I know it's probably going to be within an hour. I'll move it to 10-minute increments. And this is how I do things. This is literally how the process looks. So now I'm going to wait until that sun gets back on 9:15. But what I really want to do is wait until it gets back to like 9:14, the sun, to make sure that I'm at the exact moment that the sun is applying to Mars. So we see that there, where they're very close. I just need the sun to get on the other side of Mars because you can see they're dancing right now. So once we get back, we're before sunrise already. Okay, here we go. So now I think I'm going to take it back by 1. We need the sun to be before Mars. So this is taking some time. I apologize for that, but this is what the process looks like. It's not always super glamorous, unfortunately. Catch it on 1911. Maybe I should have done continuing 10-minute ones. Sheesh. But we know it's within an hour, so it can't be that bad. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's close. Do you try? Um, you know what? Let's do it by another 10 and see if that does it. Okay, now they go both back to 11. This is wild. Okay. And it's not wild as in interpretation, it's just wild as in like how picky this has to get. So this is going to be within the 10-minute mark. We're going to find the exact Cazimi of Mars and the sun by doing this. There we go. Don't freeze on me, Luna. I know I'm asking a lot. There we go. We got it. So on the 9th at 5:55 a.m. in Washington, D.C., this Cazimi will perfect. And if I were looking at how this affects the nation, it would happen in a second house context. So yikes, right? Not yikes as an interpretation, but that was just a lot of work. And of course, fun stuff at this time. The moon is pretty wide, but she'll be interacting with them later in the day. So the moon is considered to be in square. Jupiter is considered to be opposing. And it's we're looking at Aries. So this square here, I would disregard because that angle is not meaningful in this context. So we have a T square between Jupiter, the moon, and that Cazimi, which again keeps Venus involved. She is not far enough away for me to say she's not involved in this. She's still in Cazimi as well. So this is what I would consider a double Cazimi opposite Jupiter with the moon square. And so that is our T square situation. Yeah, wild, right? Yeah, shows how much work. Yes. So thank you for that. Let me catch up here. Yeah. So for the United States, the Cazimi of Mars occurs on the 9th at 5:55 a.m., almost 5:56, in the second house of the United States, which the second house, for anybody who's interested, shows financials and material resources and wealth. Often this can show it for that, you're going to do it on the scale of a nation, right? So that could be their economy or their exports or their resources. And it's Capricorn. So sorry, I'm a little jaded by what happened this weekend. I do have opinions and I try to stay objective because astrology does not take sides, but I sure do. So, so again, what we're seeing here, you may not be surprised by what, given the context that we've already seen when the moon activated this already. When the moon has already activated this over the weekend, literally the news of the weekend regarding Venezuela released 2 minutes before the perfection of that full moon that was opposite Mars. So I found that very interesting. If you would like more information on that, I find this to be a matter that requires consent. So in the chat, I will give you more context if I get enough people in the chat saying yes, that you would like that. Otherwise, I will save that. And I can certainly share it with the people in my my Patreon. If you guys are interested in that, you can put it in our group chat. Let me know if you want to hear about that more. Because of course, stuff like this happens and I pull up a chart. So yeah. Okay, so we do have a couple people who would like to hear more on that. I would like to see, always want to hear about it. Okay, yes, and thank you. Okay. All right. If you really don't want to hear about it, put it in the chat in all caps in the next like 10 seconds. But I do have the charts ready to show you this. So, all right, more yeses. Okay, thank you for your consent, everyone. I appreciate it. So what we're going to talk about here, yes, it is. Cool. So what we're going to talk about here is one of my favorite things, and I'm going to couch this in exciting things about astrology that will then lead us into the actual events of what happened over the weekend. In astrology, it's not just one chart that we look at when we're looking at how the times are going. We couch times within times like a Matryoshka doll, those Russian dolls, right? So what we first look at is going to be an event back in the year 2000. That was the mean triplicity shift between Earth and water of Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions. So every 20 years, Jupiter and Saturn conjoin, but they have a pattern. And so over a period of 200 years-ish, and it's not exact, which is what I'm going to get to in a second, they conjoin in the same element of sign. So for the last 200 years or so, they conjoined in Earth signs. And most recently, they shifted In the 80s, they had their first conjunction in an air sign, but then went back to an earth sign in 2000 and conjoined in Taurus. And then finally in 2020, they conjoined in Aquarius and will continue to join in air signs for the next 200-ish years. This was a triplicity shift. But to find the exact moment that we mark as the point where that pivot actually happened, we do the mean triplicity shift. We take those three conjunctions and say, which one by average is the one that is sort of the middle point. Mean and average are the same. So if you remember how you averaged in math, where you take all the numbers, add them up, and then divide them by how many numbers you have, we're doing the same thing, but with the astrology. And so the mean triplicity shift is actually that final Earth conjunction that happened in the year 2000 in Taurus. And so we take from that, you actually take the Aries ingress chart, the chart of the year of that conjunction. So we take the Aries ingress chart for the year 2000. That is our parent chart. It is the triplicity shift chart. We are going to use that with annual perfections, which is something we've talked about here a lot. And so we annually perfect from that and say, okay, when does something important happen? When the perfection comes to a point where it meets up with the conjunction, it meets up with where Mars is, or something like that. And then we also take the chart for the most recent conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. That was the 2021. So we perfect from that too. And we say, okay, where does this one fall onto? Now we have two things for context to put together. Then we take the Aries ingress for the year in which the event occurred that we're looking at. And the Aries ingress for right now, I know we're in the year 2026, but this is 2025's Aries ingress that we are still in. It is from Aries ingress to the next Aries ingress. So we have not reached the 2026 year yet astrologically. So when we look at the 2025 Aries ingress, we want to start saying which planets represent which categories of people or who is represented by which planet. The two primary things you look at here is what is representing leadership, which planet is representing leadership, which planet is representing the body of the nation, which is its people, and then which planet is sort of Lord of the Year because it seems to have its fingers in everything. And so when I did the math, trust me on this, the Lord of last year was the moon in the 11th house of Sagittarius. The moon is a co-significator. So you get two planets that will help you understand, for more context and nuance, the condition of the king, the leadership, and the condition of the people. The moon is the co-ruler of the people. It is the body in our individual astrology, and it's the body of the nation. So the moon being Lord of the Year and of the people means that it was doubly ruling the people. The people had a say in 2025, and we continue to. And there is some even more minutia timing coming up around the middle of January that is important for the moon. So we see that the moon is important, right? And we had a full moon recently in her domicile. So the moon, Lord of the Year, had an important moment in an important place for her. That's something to keep in mind. Then we say, who's the ruler of the 10th house? Because this is the throne room of the chart when we're looking at a nation. The ruler of the 10th house of Scorpio is, of course, Mars. So Mars represents the king in collaboration with the sun. Of course, the sun's always going to represent the king. And I'm not saying the king as in like literally, it's how the texts called it. And the texts were developed in empires and kingdoms and things like that. That was their context. So here we would say president or leadership. Okay, so leadership in our chart for 2025, which is the year we are still in right now, is represented by Mars and by the sun. And so when we think about that, Mars and the moon being the people and the Lord of the Year, and Mars being the co-ruler of the leadership, are very important this year. And then when we look at that full moon that we had, the application of the moon to the next planet it's going to talk to is also very important. So when we look at this full moon, we had a full moon in her domicile, again, very important, amplified, a notable moment for the ruler of the year, the one who is in charge of what happens in the year, and for the people, because that's also the ruler of the people. And she was opposite Mars. So Mars in exaltation, nearing Cazimis with the sun, and being the next applying aspect for the moon. Mars, who represents the leadership, but also, of course, Mars being what Mars is our primary indicator for, think about Aries and Mars in your deity archetypes, right? So things like attack, competition, those kinds of topics. Exactly what happened over the weekend, guys, right? So this perfected on January 3rd at 5:02 a.m. The news of what happened in Venezuela released at 5 a.m. Eastern time. I was awake for it. So this to me, because the moon is the closest to us. We talked about her being the fastest in the sky. It's because she's the closest to us. She translates everything from the sky to us. Earlier, when I was showing you the Cazimis, and I pointed out that she is an aspect to them each time, and I said that that makes this personal, it's because that's what the moon does. She is the one who takes what the sky is saying and whispers it into our ear. And so if it connects to her directly, she can connect to us directly, and she can make things happen or show a sign of things happening more actively or in the rational. So this is what we are seeing. The representation of our leadership conjunct the secondary representation of our leadership opposite the moon, who is the representation of the people and the Lord of the year in her domicile, while Mars is in exaltation. That's pretty clear when you actually look at it in the context of what these planets mean for the Aries ingress of the United States, right? So as you can tell, this is the Aries ingress, this first chart of the United States, because it's cast for Washington. Like I said, it doesn't change much. I'm fortunate in astrological terms to live near that. It changes nothing. But you would cast it for the capital or the center of power and governance of the nation you are in. If you wanted to make that even more personal to you, you would do it for the center of governance in your state, if you are in the United States, or similar, whatever the smaller focus is in whatever country you're coming from. So that is, that's one of the things that I'm seeing. Other contexts do come into play, like the condition from back in the last Aries ingress. There's a lot going on. But those two being such literal players of what they were representing showed up. And so we're going to see that, of course, now the reaction of that and the certain, like, when Mars comes into Cazimi again and reveals its truest form, we might actually, not that we don't already know, maybe, but we might see like the illumination of what's really going on, or the real unveiling of intentions, or something like that, or some kind of more direct action that goes along with it. That is a prediction that is archetypal. So take it for a grain of salt. And if it's helpful, great. And if it's not helpful, ignore it. Listen, your mental health is first and foremost. One of the most important things of becoming an astrologer is to be very discerning in your mental health, because you're going to start picking up on things, and you don't want to go wild with it, because then you become honestly paranoid. It's a phase I think each astrologer goes through. We have our period where, like, this is so exciting. Oh my God, everything's terrible and I can see all the bad things happening. And then you get to a neutral point where you understand you're witnessing history, you're witnessing it unfold. And sometimes, at some points you can say, I am witnessing history, and because I see it in the chart, I know that maybe there's purpose behind it, but I do know for sure that there is an after, because the chart will continue to move forward, and so will the events. And if I can see something good coming, I can look forward to that and anticipate it, and I can find out how to take care of myself in the meantime, what to focus on while I wait. To me, that is the definition of patience. It's not waiting and being okay with waiting. It's, what do I do to keep myself busy while I'm waiting, knowing that the time will come. So there's that. Do we have any questions on that? Thank you, AJ, for giving a nice summary of everything in the comments. I appreciate it. Yeah, awesome. I'm glad that you find this fascinating too, you guys. So do I. In astrology, astrologers have this thing. We have different alignments, and we call things astrology good. When something arguably not good happens, but the astrology, that's called astrology good. So this would be textbook astrology good, even though the events are not. So AJ pulled a card on the full moon, talked about water and how it moves and changes, and it's adapting change and letting it flow. That's cool. I'm not sure if this is because my office is a bit chilly, but I had goosebumps when you mentioned the news announcement timing. Yeah, when I pulled that up, sometimes I still do get goosebumps from astrology, psychic mediumship, all the stuff, right? Like it is my everyday life. It is so normal to me, but that doesn't mean it stops fascinating me or it just stops creating wonder around me. When I looked that up, I went to Dan and I was like, can you guess? I bet you can guess when the moon perfected this morning. And he was like, was it around 5 a.m.? Yes, it was. And so another fun fact about transits is that, it was 5 a.m. when we got the announcement, but the perfection was at 5:02, right? And that's not exact. That's okay. The application or the planets coming together is one of the most potent points. The conjunction is the event itself. So again, I like to, and I've done this before for reasons that if you've watched the Alchemist Inkwell podcast or listened to it will be funny for you. I relate the application and the separation and the conjunction of aspects to a sneeze. You can feel the sneeze coming. And that's the worst part of the sneeze, like knowing it's coming and anticipating it and getting ready for it. And then you have the sneeze. The event occurs, right? You feel it coming, the event occurs, and then you have your exhale. That's like the applying of the aspect, the conjunction of the aspect, and the separation of the aspect. There is the building up of rising action, if we want to use a storyline kind of comparison, the plot point itself, and then the falling action. It's very similar. So that is kind of what we're seeing with that. Yeah. All right. I am going to stop sharing the screen for I can always pull it back up later. I see it as the planets allow energy to flow and transform for good or bad, and not so much for controlling outcomes. Yeah. Would that be a fair assessment? Yeah. We talked about this on our Wednesday live stream on Twitch, where again, the planets aren't taking sides. They're just letting you read the headlines. They're letting you see where motion is going. The debate of if planets are in control of events and fate, fortune, free will, that whole thing goes back straight to the beginning. We have astrologers in ancient Egypt making their arguments for how they feel about that. My favorite is Plotinus, not because I necessarily agree with him. I think I do. But Plotinus said, treat the planets as though they are characters on a stage and they are enacting the story. And we watch the story and we react to it and we take that in. And I like to say he put the plot in Plotinus. So that is definitely something. Yeah, just like the rain in the Breath of the Wild. Yeah, man, in that game, you can't climb things when it's raining and it just won't stop raining. So I'm having to get very creative with how we get around. Yeah, treat the planets like they're characters on the stage. That's more or less how Plotinus put it. They're enacting the script. And you get to interpret that and react to that and decide how you feel about it in whatever way aligns with you. I do believe astrology is a really great way to observe time and history. And I also get to decide how I feel about that and get to play my part in it where I see fit. So I don't think it removes our ability to take action. I don't think it removes our free will. I think it is indicator and validator. And, it helps me process things. I need to process things a lot more slowly, being the neurodivergent and just type of person that I am. So it's really helpful for me to see something coming and start processing it in advance so that by the time it comes up, I am more prepared because I've processed a little bit to help other people process. It's one of my teaching hacks is process in advance. Yeah. So I hope that helps, Jenny. Feel like how Link in the Rain can't climb the Rocky Mountain is how we feel this year right now, especially when these big events happen. Yeah. On a personal level, just looking at the next few years, not only using astrology, but I've been in conversations every once in a while. If you're in advanced astrology, the subreddit on the Reddit website, you might see me pop in there. My name is different, but I'll pop in there with some other people, interact in the conversations just to get more perspectives. I was talking to someone this morning who interacts a lot more with Chinese astrology and was talking about the year of the fire horse and next year being the fire goat and what those things correlate with and how they kind of track in the Chinese astrological types. And it matches up, of course, really well with what we're seeing in our version of astrology as well in our practice. It's an interesting next few years. Is it entirely scary? I think that depends on your outlook and how safe you feel in general, your personal circumstances. I had a mentor when I was learning astrological magic who told me something that has stuck with me so much. And it's just a dose of reality. He said, you can get the best transit in the world, the best election for a talisman in the world. But if you're in the context of 1943 and you're living in Poland, that means that you get out alive. Like that's how that election might show up for you or how it might play out, even though it's the best one in the world. So I understand. And we see this in Valens too. Medius Valens, who wrote an anthology that is one of our quintessential astrological resources, says there will be epochs of time where the general note is challenging, but even within them, there will be good transits. There will be good times within those. And there will be epochs of times when it's prosperity and the best of things. And even in those epochs of times, there will be transits and moments that present challenges. So it's just the understanding that at some point, your mindset does come into play and your circumstances are unique to you. So you have to take care of yourself in ways that you feel like you need to be taken care of. I've been through that. I know what it's like to feel very unsafe to the point of almost being debilitated in a lot of ways and then having to pull through it. I saw a really excellent post by someone over the weekend who had gone through a lot and they got to a point in their life where they just said, I can't do it. And they realized that that was unsustainable for them at some point. And they, instead of saying, I can do it, which sometimes is almost too exhausting to think about, they said, I'll figure it out. So I'm going to share that with you today, just in case this is something that feels like a lot for you. It's understandable if it is. If you feel like you can't do it, or if you feel trapped, the I will figure it out um, helps a lot. I've mentioned lightly, but about a year ago, I went through probably one of the most difficult times in my life. Truly, I could not get off the floor some mornings. I used music. I used everything that I had in my arsenal, my mental health toolkit, my therapist, my support group. And I had to take it one day at a time, and it felt agonizingly long. And that was my own personal things going really hard in an epoch of time that I would consider rather challenging. And I don't know, I figured it out in some ways. I became a person who was capable in a lot of ways. But also the time released things too. The time unfolded things. So yes, we have those moments of intense pressure. And yes, my astrology was wild. And if I hadn't known that I was having wild astrology at that point, it probably would have been even more difficult. But I had the astrology. I could find the time where I could expect and hope for things to loosen up or lighten up a little bit. And in the meantime, I had to decide what I was going to do every day until then. So please understand, even though astrology has no opinions, even though astrology is an indifferent force in many ways, the planets aren't taking sides. Um, I know, and I try to be empathetic, and I try to be rational, and I try to make this as helpful as possible. Because life isn't always easy, and sometimes encouragement from someone just isn't quite enough. It doesn't feel real or true enough. But if you can find those things that help you in these times, I hope you do. And I hope that maybe this and the other ways that we interact throughout the week and the podcast and all those things can be islands for you. The next thing to look forward to, the breadcrumbs that get you through the week, because you certainly are for me. So yeah, the next right thing, Shona, that is the song I would play to get myself off the floor. So thank you, Frozen 2. And yeah, I still, because of that, like I thought it was a sad song and it made me feel things before, but then when I used it and now when I listen to it, it still makes me cry. So if you want to see me cry, that's the song that'll do it. Yeah. Hey, Stephlin, good to see you. So yes. And now as we reach the sort of 10-minute mark before we wrap up this call, thank you guys for going with me on that journey. I hope it was educational and fun, fun. Or at least interesting. Yeah. Cool. AJ says, I agree with that. Sometimes get into a trap of seeing friends and peers where I see them overcoming things that I feel that I should be also overcoming. And comparison can be a trap. Comparison can absolutely be a trap. I use astrology to remind myself that we all have our own timing. We all have our own storyline, that, when someone's getting something that I worked half my life for, or more than half my life for, I also remind myself that, like, good that they're getting that. And if this isn't my moment, then whatever my moment's going to be is going to feel even better attuned to me. Right. So when we talk about manifesting, we say this or better. It's always about what's best for me. So if you're seeing someone get exactly what you thought you wanted, sometimes there are more slices than one slice of a pie. So that can happen as well. B, you have your own timing. And C, yours might look a little different because you are a different person too. So when I get stuck in comparison or jealousy or something like that, one of my conscious reactions tends to be happy for them. This is their moment and they deserve it. And then get excited for how I can't anticipate how good the thing that is for me will be. Because if this isn't it, then there must be something better for me individually, right? This is perfect for them. It doesn't mean mine's better than theirs. It just means that it's going to suit me better. And this wasn't as perfect of a fit for me as I thought it was. The next thing will be, as long as I keep going. And I've seen that show up. So it doesn't feel like delusion anymore, because I have seen that show up. Stephlin pulled the Tower card this morning. The tower is related to Mars. Steph, watch this replay. We've been talking about Mars this whole time. Mars is in Cazimis with the sun this entire week. So, and perhaps in your personal timing, Mars is prominent, maybe a time lord of your perfections or something like that. But also, the Tower card can show up with stuff. It might be that there's action to be taken. Mars can have constructive qualities just as well as Mars can have, challenging ones. We have community here. Yay. We have a little pocket of grounded community. I really love that you feel that way. That's exactly what I tried to create here. And I'm glad that it translates. Yeah. Yeah, of course. All right. Yeah. Cool. Well, does anybody have anything that they want to bring up? I know I've monopolized a lot of the time. So I understand I'm the one on the video as well. But if you have something that you wanted to bring up, any questions, we do have a little bit of time I could probably handle. Yeah. Yeah. We went through a lot today, Shauna. But I think it's warranted just for the context of what's going on and to be able to help us navigate the week. It feels like we're in a canoe, like a single person canoe, and you just got to go through the rapids a little bit. And just remember, if you're feeling things and you're like, well, the astrology validates this, other people are feeling things and they may not know. They may not get their validation from the people around them, from the astrology, from other methods. So it's a great time to not take things personally if you can help it, to keep holding your boundaries respectfully. If you feel you need to, by all means. But yeah, it helps. I held boundaries a couple times last week. I've been feeling this Mars in Capricorn. Mars also, by the way, is considered to be out of bounds right now. And that simply means that the planets have like this band of the sky. It is the zodiac that they typically stick to. But sometimes they get to the very tippy top of it or the very bottom of it. And they're a little bit wild card in those places when they're really far on one side or the other. And that's considered out of bounds. So they can act surprisingly or uncharacteristically. And yes, Mars has been out of bounds for a couple weeks now. For context, Mars will get out of Capricorn and will be back in bounds by January 24th. If you're looking for like an island to look forward to next when it comes to timing, January 24th, Mars will move on out of Capricorn. Some of that intensity should ease, and we'll see what happens then. They have been boundary heavy days. Yeah. And not even like the Saturnian boundary, right? Where it's like, I've created a boundary. I don't need to tell you about it, but I'm doing it. It's the, hey, whoa, excuse me a second. I need to communicate a boundary with you. And that's okay. Not a question, but a fun moment. I did a spell on Thursday and I felt Jupiter's expansion in fortune. I'm so glad you felt that energy, Jenny. That's awesome. Your clear audience upgraded this weekend, and now you have a voice for one of your guides. That's always fun. That is fantastic, Ren. Congratulations for that too. That's awesome. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, cool. Caught up. Yeah. What is that? Oh, it's a waving person. Okay. Those emojis are great, AJ. Thank you so much. I enjoy them a lot on our Twitch streams. We had a good time on Twitch this past weekend. I've got a new setup that's been helpful. It wasn't the weekend, it was New Year's Eve, but that already feels like so long ago. New Year's Eve, like, are we not in June yet? You've been vocal about your boundaries, so out of your comfort zone, but good growing moments. Yeah. Yeah, we had just as a brief anecdote, anybody else who is neurodivergent may see this. We were talking to a dog trainer recently, and they were telling about how they train dogs to be autistic support dogs. And I was like, oh, that's fascinating. As someone who's autistic, like, do they help you mitigate meltdowns? Do they help you, navigate stuff? Like, what do you train them for? And he was like, well, we mostly do them for kids because an adult with autism, their problem is mostly just the anxiety from having been a kid with autism. And I looked at him and I was like, no, it's from having been traumatized as a child with autism. Like, please understand that your perspective on this is skewed and do better. And Dan was sitting next to me and he was just like, keep digging, buddy, keep digging. Cause I was like, I'm for some reason not going to let that one go. So I had this way of like, I will make eye contact in that moment and I will not stop. So there was that. Yeah, time is wonky right now. Oh, you finished Stranger Things last night. That's awesome. Yeah, stare them down. Yes. Hey, Gabe. You came in at the perfect time. Sometimes you just have to give them the bombastic side eye. Yeah. Yeah. I was just like, it sounds like you've been trained, but that you haven't experienced. Let me help you. But yeah, belated Happy New Year. I saw some of your posts from New Year, Gabe. Sounds like you had a really good feast. I was jealous. But yeah, I hope it's a Happy New Year for everybody. Yeah, I do. On a personal level, there's no reason it can't be, right? The world is doing what the world is doing, but we can find our good moments. I was quoting Valens earlier, Gabe, about how in challenging, periods of time, there will be good transits. So we're going to look forward to those. Yeah. Yep, it's cool. Yeah, it looked good, man. I, of course, love food. So I'm certainly always going to celebrate when someone has good food. There's always good and bad in mixture. Yep. Because that's life. Like I am definitely one to get caught in black and white thinking, right? But when you think of like, it has to be all good or it has to be all bad, that's not realistic. Thank goodness. Some real talk about astrology teachers and past astrologers. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I quoted Rhetorius on today's live, some Valens. We had a lot of good resources. I actually got to do a course, like an introduction to electional astrology for folk magicians last Friday. And that was fulfilling in such a way. I had such a good time. I was speaking to seasoned folk magicians who just hadn't really incorporated astrology and the technical use of astrology into their practices yet. So I was explaining it to them. I had a PowerPoint that I thought was going to be 6 slides, but it ended up being 22. Took an hour and a half to do the lecture and the tutorials. But it felt really good and it was well received and people were excited. So that's one of the things I'm celebrating right now is that I was able to do that. And that, it showed that I've come to a point in my own knowledge where I can share it with seasoned practitioners and bring value. So I loved that too. It ended up being 22. Yeah. I was like, but you know what? It's probably going to be helpful to see this too. You know what? I should show this chart. Here are some examples that'll be really fun and help them really connect. But the best compliment one of them gave me was that I'm a born teacher. And I appreciate that because again, I want education, teaching, sharing to be a cornerstone of what I do. And it's always nice to get that validation. It really is. Yep. So things that we can look forward to this week, right? I know we're navigating a lot with the Cazimis, with the moon, with all this stuff. But if you want your little islands, we have Wednesday. We'll be doing some more Breath of the Wild. Hopefully, the sun will come out, and we'll make some progress there, get a little bit stronger, and be able to take on perhaps our first divine beast at some point soon. We're also thinking about moving into, like, I know Animal Crossing's got its new release coming out, not a release of a new game, but a patch. So we're thinking about those kinds of things too. Cozy gaming, real magic, grounded community and conversation. We're there for you. And then Friday will be the Alchemist Ink Spill live. And of course, today, the new episode of the Alchemist Inkwell comes out as well. So little pebbles for all of you from myself and from Emily. We will catch you, for me, next time, Wednesday night. I look forward to seeing you guys there. Tell your friends we're having such a good time over there. Misty, I appreciate you a ton. That means so much to me. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Stay safe this week. Anything you need to do to feel safe and good, I wish you all of that. All right, guys. Bye.